Hey guys, Dan here with this week's TV news and reviews, trying to catch up a little bit still, but we do have 6 new shows to talk about this week and some interesting news as well, so let's get it started. Thanks for joining me. My name is Dan, and this is Dan Reviews It, our weekly TV roundup show, news and reviews. And we start, as always, with some news about renewals and cancellations. So we've got quite a few renewals, actually, to talk about. So Star Trek Discovery, Season 4 is coming. Season 3 just dropped last week, but they've announced that Season 4 is going to start filming November 2nd. And actually, the co-creator Alex Kurtzman has said that he has the entire Trek show slate of schedules, I guess you could say, through 2027. He's got all the different shows, of course, Lower Decks and Picard, and there's, I think, 2 new ones still coming up, and then Discovery as well. So he's got that planned for the next 6 years or so on CBS All Access, which, by the way, I have some news coming up a little bit later about CBS All Access and a name change that is coming for them. But other than Star Trek, we've got The Vow, Season 2 coming on HBO, which I think is very interesting because that was a docuseries about the NXIVM cult, and I reviewed the first episode of that, and it was very interesting. Actually, I think I watched the first 2 of that, but it did seem sort of like it would be a self-contained story. But the interesting thing about cults and things like this is there's always sort of more to say. Like Leah Remini went 3 seasons with her Scientology show, and I think technically it's still a current show. There hasn't been a new season in about 2 years, but I don't think they've canceled the Leah Remini show. So, when it comes to things like that, a cult or Scientology, which is sort of a religion, but I think it's more of a cult, I guess there's always more to explore. So, but I didn't know they were actually looking to make that a regular show, so it's very interesting. That got renewed. And then a couple of shows I don't watch, but have heard good things about. Black Monday on Showtime, that's going for Season 3, and that is with Don Cheadle. Usually really like him, so I'm sure that's a fine show. And then The Last OG on TBS is going to Season 4, and I knew Tracy Morgan was sort of the star of that. Something I didn't realize, though, is that Tiffany Haddish has been on that show since the beginning, and obviously her star has risen immensely over the last few years with Girls Trip and all of her hosting duties and her comedy specials. So she has decided to not renew her contract for Season 4. So she won't be a part of it, but it will continue on with Tracy Morgan for a 4th season. They didn't indicate whether it was the 4th and final, but TBS is getting to be sort of like Netflix, where if something gets beyond 3 seasons, like that's pretty impressive. So we'll see about that. All right, so canceled, we have 2 on Fox. Well, one of them is sort of on Fox. Actually, neither of them originated on Fox, though. So LA's Finest, which I reviewed last week to not favorable reviews, that is done. They got that from Spectrum Originals. So technically, Spectrum Originals is the one who canceled it. And it actually was originally for something else. I think... Boy, I forget what I had read about it. It was originally for a different network entirely, though. They passed on it, and then Spectrum Originals got it. And it was actually their very first original show. It sort of brought the whole originals into the Spectrum part. So, but that, after 2 seasons, has been canceled. I think, look, I talked a lot last week when I reviewed it about the timing of the show is not real great. I mean, it shows cops really, just playing by their own rules and doing whatever they want to do. And, 2020 really isn't the moment for that. So, they brought it to Fox this season for, basically COVID fill slots. They can't produce all of their original usual programming, so they sort of opted to buy a couple of other things. So they're running Season 1 right now for LA's Finest. And the first couple episodes have garnered about 4 million viewers. So, to be honest, for a Fox show, that they're not even producing, they just bought it. Like, that's not bad. So they may decide to actually run season 2 next fall or in the summer or something. I mean, season 2 already exists. They would just have to buy it. So, but obviously it will not go past season 2. I mean, I guess unless it does well enough for Fox that they pick it up. I don't see that happening, but I could see them maybe running season 2. But the other show is Last Man Standing, which of course originated on ABC and was there for 6 seasons. I didn't realize it was quite that long. I thought it was maybe 4. But it got canceled, then took an entire year off before Fox stepped up to the plate and started running new episodes. And they are now on what's going into the 9th season, but it will be the final season. And that seems to have been a mutual decision for everybody. I think Tim Allen kind of was saying, look, we sat down with the creators, we sat down with Fox, and we decided to kind of go out on our own terms. This is going to be our last season of, a full season they're going to give us. So, it seemed like kind of a mutual decision, but at the same time, like, man, 9 seasons of a sitcom these days is pretty crazy, especially when it started on a different network. But it is owned by Fox, which is why Fox kind of picked up the torch and ran with it after ABC canceled it. And Fox has made a lot of money on the syndication rights and selling it to whatever it's on. I think it's Netflix, but I don't know. But whatever streamer it's on, I'm sure they made a good deal with that too. So that means that Fox only has 2 live-action comedies in the pipeline still. It's going to be the new series starting in January with Mayim Bialik, and then The Moody's, which was originally just a holiday special last year. It was with Dennis Leary and Elizabeth Perkins, and that has turned into a full series. I don't know when that's going to start. I'm sure COVID probably delayed that. Although I still don't think it was supposed to start in the fall. I think it was always going to be a mid-season show, so we may see that in January as well. So let's talk about CBS again. So a couple things with CBS. First of all, CBS, the actual channel, not the streaming service, has set up their first batch of fall premiere dates. So ABC is on it this week. Like Wednesday night is going to be the premiere of The Goldbergs, The Connors, I think Blackish as well. And then they're going to roll things out from there. Grey's Anatomy and Station 19. NBC is right on their heels. I believe Superstore premieres this week. And they've been touting, This Is Us premieres next week. The Voice starts tonight. So, NBC rolling out some of their stuff as well. But CBS, a little bit later on the trigger, but that's okay. It's in COVID times, nobody's going to really fault you for that. But between November 5th and the 17th, they're going to premiere 10 of their popular shows, actually 9 of their popular shows, and 1 brand new show, the only show that actually was able to complete a pilot before all the shutdowns, and that's a Chuck Lorre show called Be Positive. And the first show to air is Young Sheldon, which makes sense. It's pretty much their most popular comedy. But yeah, we'll have over the next, those 2 weeks, you'll have pretty much all their comedies except for The Unicorn, I think. But you'll get Mom, you'll get Bob Abishola, and then some of the dramas as well. You'll have All Rise and some of the NCISs. So all of that is going to premiere within that sort of 2-week period starting on November 5th. But as far as their streaming service, so we talked a little bit ago about how they want to do a big rebrand in 2021 for CBS All Access. Because listen, it's pretty much the Star Trek channel and old CBS shows from the 60s. Like, if you want to watch Happy Days and Andy Griffith, cool, CBS All Access. If you want to watch Star Trek, cool, CBS All Access. But they really have struggled to branch out from those identities, even though they have other shows. And obviously you can watch all of the current CBS programs on there, at least the last few episodes, if not the full season. So, okay, but it still needs a rebrand. I only my most devotee Star Trek friends subscribe to this. Nobody else that I know. And so they're rebranding it in 2021. It's going to be called Paramount Plus, which makes sense. We're doing all the pluses now. Disney Plus, Apple TV Plus. And not that CBS doesn't have a strong brand, but I think it makes people think a little more narrowly. Yes, CBS has a lot of other shows on there because they were produced by Paramount. Like Cheers and Frasier obviously came from NBC, but they were Paramount shows. So being under the Paramount umbrella, I think maybe will widen people's idea of what is on CBS All Access. I think they're going to add a lot of the classic Paramount movies. I think they're also going to, add things that we talked about, like shows from Nickelodeon and MTV, and they might be on already. I'm not sure. I know they were sort of talking about adding that to kind of freshen it up. But so it's going to be called Paramount TV, or Paramount Plus, no TV. Paramount Plus. I assume the price will remain the same, but I didn't read that in the article, so I don't know for sure. But I do know that they're getting a pretty big name show that was originally going to be on HBO Max, and that is the Grease prequel. That was going to be a show about Rydell High. However, it's changed a little bit in its sort of course, I guess. It's going to be called now Rise of the Pink Ladies. So it's still going to be a prequel, but it's going to be really, more focusing on the Pink Ladies, Rizzo, and I don't know. I've never really, I'm not a Grease fan, but I know Rizzo is one of them. So it's going to focus on the women more than just sort of an overall arching series. So that will be premiering at some point, I guess, in 2021. But they haven't even started filming it yet, so I don't know when. But that will be on the new Paramount Plus. Other than that, we have a couple of casting changes. So Kathleen Turner is going to be in at the Kaminsky Method. We talked about how Alan Arkin is leaving for the third season. He's decided not to come back. And I think from what I read, if I remember, that was not COVID related. I think he kind of sat down with the producers after season 2 and was like, look, I'm out. I don't really want to do a weekly series anymore. So, but look, Kathleen Turner and Michael Douglas, who is still on Kaminsky, is, they're a classic pairing. They did all those movies in the 80s, The War of the Roses and Romancing the Stone. So, they know each other well, and I think she will be a welcome addition. I really enjoy the show, but I do think of it as a two-hander, and with Alan Arkin out, I'm glad they found, a good replacement in my mind. Other than that, we have Kate Hudson joining the series Truth Be Told on Apple TV+, and that was originally supposed to be a mini-series, and it did so well for Apple TV that they decided to renew it. They don't release numbers, so nobody knows really how many people watched it, but I thought it was okay. I think I gave it a C or maybe even a C-. Octavia Spencer stars in it, and I love her. However, I didn't love the show, but Kate Hudson will appear in season 2 as, I guess, a childhood buddy of hers, and they're going to figure out a different murderer or something. I don't know. And then finally, this isn't new casting news, but it's new show news about people and characters that we might be familiar with. They're going to do a Fried Green Tomatoes TV show, and it's going to be produced by Norman Lear, who is, God bless him, in his late 90s. I believe he's 98 years old. Keeps plugging along. He's the producer of the new One Day at a Time. He's going to produce this. Apparently, he had a hand in producing the movie, which I didn't realize. But Reba McEntire, our good buddy, we love Reba. She's going to be on the show, and she's going to play the character that Mary Stuart Masterson played in the movie, but in the present day. And it's basically she's been away from the area, from the Whistle Stop Cafe for 10, 15 years, and she's coming back into people's lives. So I guess it's a sequel of sorts, but I would think of it with, the whole new cast and everything. I would think of it more as a reboot, but just, years later from what the movie and the book portrayed. But that could be interesting. I love Reba McEntire, and I'm always interested in anything Norman Lear is doing. And then finally, we have This Week in Reboots, and it was a biggie if you haven't heard this one yet. Dexter is coming back for a 10-episode mini-season. Will it be, 10 episodes isn't really a mini-season for cable, but, back in the day, they produced more. Like, Weeds was on Showtime, just like Dexter, right around the same time, and Weeds had, 16, 18 episodes a season, so I don't know. I watched the first episode of Dexter, and it was just kind of too gruesome for me, so I just never went back. I've heard that it definitely starts focusing more on characters and less on the gore and the killing. as the series goes, especially even the first season. But I was just out from the first episode. So, and what's funny is I watched it on CBS. CBS ran it as like a summer replacement show. I guess they owned Showtime, or maybe they still own Showtime. I don't know, but or they just bought it. But anyway, so it was a sanitized version that I saw. It was a primetime CBS version that I saw, and it was still like, this is too gory for me. But that was, I don't know, 15 years ago or something. So I'm sure I can handle it now. But in any event, Michael C. Hall is back, and the showrunner is back, Clyde Phillips. So they're going to come up in about a year. It's slated for release in the fall, but they're going to have a 10-episode mini. I keep saying mini because I think of it as a mini series, I guess, but it's not. It's going to be a season, and if it does well, they'll give it another season, I guess. But yeah, so for you Dexter fans, I'm sure that is good news. I don't know how the final episode ended. You know, they always say, like, oh yeah, we're coming back with such and such a show, and you think, okay, well, well, kind of like, you know, when Roseanne was coming back, you were like, well, the last episode of that was, you know, kind of weird. And then Will and Grace, last episode of that launched them 20 years into the future. So I don't know. A lot of times they're just sort of forgetting that the last episodes ever happened when they do these reboots. So I don't know. Is Dexter even still alive? I have no clue. But, you know, but if you're a fan of that show, then you can look forward to that coming in about a year. So let's get into the reviews, I should say. Like I said, we've got 6 shows to do. A couple of them are on network, but they are not new original content. One of them is, but it's like pieced together, and then the other one was purchased again from good old Spectrum Originals. So we're going to talk about those coming up. But first, I want to talk about a couple of streaming shows that are really kind of hot right now. And the first is Monsterland. This is, you know, hitting perfectly right before Halloween. This is on Hulu, and it is an anthology series that they're billing as a drama horror anthology. And it's actually based on a short story collection called North American Lake Monsters, which makes sense because each of the stories, basically the title is the town. So it's all over the country. You know, we're going to see things from New Jersey and Texas and Illinois. And I watched the first 2 here, so it's from Louisiana and Oregon in these 2. And usually with the hour-long shows, I only watch 1 episode because I don't have all the time in the world to binge 10 episodes of a series, so I sort of sample the pilot. But with anthology series, you can't just watch one and grade the whole show. It just doesn't work like that because obviously each episode for an anthology is going to be a different plot, different stories, different characters, and for the most part, different actors, too. And so we see that here as well. So in the first one, in Louisiana, we have Caitlin Dever, who I really love, you know, from Booksmart, and I go back to Bad Teacher with her. And I feel like, speaking of Last Man Standing, she was the daughter on the first few seasons of that before she went to college. I think I'm right on that, because I just remember watching the first few episodes of that and thinking that's the gal from Bad Teacher. But anyway, so she's in the first episode. Then the second episode is Charlie Tahan, who I've seen in like a bunch of different things. He did the voice of the main kid in Frankenweenie, but I've also seen him in a few things as well when he was a little younger. He's a bit older now, in his, I would say, early 20s. And so the first, I don't want to give spoilers, so I don't want to say what sort of the twist is for each one, but the first episode, let's say, is more of a traditional horror, and the second episode is more of a, it's certainly got horror elements to it, but it's, I don't know, it's more character driven, I would say. Not that we don't see some character development in the first episode. In fact, we see a lot of it, but I think the first episode is more classically horror, I guess you could say. So, you know, look, this is, first of all, hitting at exactly the right time, of course, Halloween. And there's 8 episodes total, so, you know, fairly easy to binge. And I think this is well, though, to be called a drama horror anthology series, because I feel like the drama / you know, character development and that sort of thing is more front and center than the horror aspects of it. There's definitely a creepiness to it throughout each of these episodes as we're getting to know the characters. There's definitely some creepy moments, some that pay off, some that definitely do not pay off. But, we get a good sense of characterization here. I think better than we get in some full-length, hour and 45-minute horror films. And here we are only spending an hour with these characters, but yet I think we still get a better sense of their lives and their characters than we do in other features. So I think that is definitely one good thing about it. One bad thing maybe is that it maybe isn't enough horror or thriller. It's more focused on the drama than maybe, I know it's a little bit of a contradiction review, but I think there needs to be maybe a better balance there, because the thing is, we're not going to see these characters ever again. It's an anthology series. I mean, I guess sometimes, if a character or an episode is popular enough, they'll go back to it in a subsequent season, but for this season, we only see these characters one time, so yes, it is great to get a full picture of them, but maybe sparsing in the scares a little bit more. I think of it less as a horror and more of maybe a thriller in some aspects, certainly maybe a psychological thriller, but that's not really how it's being billed and how it's being marketed. So did it freak me out a few times? Yes, I could say that it did. So it sort of nails the horror there. The acting is actually a little bit hit or miss, sadly. Like, I really like Caitlin Dever, but her her Louisiana accent is not good. So that's kind of a bummer. But look, you'll get mixed results with any anthology series. No episode is, gonna, no anthology series has all great episodes. Maybe The Twilight Zone is an example. I don't know. I haven't seen all of them, but I mean, pretty classically, everyone loves the original Twilight Zone. But I will say, for the 2 episodes I watched, it's certainly more consistent than other anthologies we've seen lately. Anthologies are interesting for streamers because, we didn't see a ton of them really, in the last, 20, 30, I mean, it was big in like the 50s and 60s, but we don't see them a ton anymore, and now we're seeing them pop up because of the streamers, and some of them are better than others. I think from the 2 episodes I saw, I can definitely give Monsterland a positive grade if you enjoy this sort of thing, but be aware that it delves a little bit more into characterization than a lot of horror movies that you might be used to. But I'm going to leave Monsterland with a B. I think it could certainly fill a void, in spooky TV right now. There's a lot of scary movies obviously coming out, but for TV shows, I think this'll really hit for a lot of people. So let's move to Netflix next and talk about Emily in Paris. This is it premiered about 2 weeks ago, and it's still on Netflix's top 5. It's big hit series. It's from Darren Star, the creator of Sex and the City, and I believe he was part of 90210 as well originally. So he knows his way around a teen and young adult type drama. Sex and the City, obviously they're a little older than that, but still, but he also, because of that, knows the theory behind sort of making the city itself a character, and he really wants to do that with Emily in Paris as well. Sex and the City, of course, New York, and here we have Paris. So Lily Collins is at the helm here. She plays Emily, who is moving to Paris for a job opportunity. Her boss was going to go but got pregnant, and so she's like, nope, I'm out, you got to go for me. And so she moves there but knows zero French, so she's having some issues in the workplace and also trying to find love, and has a ton of culture clash with her, Midwestern sensibilities, moving to this, crazy, good old Paris town, everybody speaks French, and this and that and the other thing. This show, I'm really like, I don't know what to think of this show, because it was enjoyable, but it is very much not well made. It's soapy and stuff, and Lily Collins is fine, but there's so many problems with A, just the basic premise, and B, sort of how Parisians are interpreted by the writers of this show. I mean, and I don't. I read a couple of news articles about it because I was sort of like, this is. I don't know how French people are going to view this show. And so I looked up a couple of articles, and they're like real mad about it. And I could see why. Like, it makes French people, completely sex crazed. Like, everybody in France is who's the character, is a Samantha from Sex and the City, to bring it back to a Darren Star show. So everybody's super sex crazed, which, okay, you can sort of forgive that because it's a soap, and we'll see this, but they're just late for work all the time, and they're lazy, and they don't really bathe, and so it's like there's all these like really negative stereotypes. But aside from that, just the basic premise of the show, so like the boss gets pregnant and right away can't go. She's not 8 months pregnant. She just found out she's pregnant, and she's like, nope, not going to Paris. That's number one. Number two, you send the person with the least amount of experience and least amount of French knowledge into the mix. Like, I get it for the premise of the show. I guess you have to, because that's where the drama comes from. But they just could have written something that made a little more sense. It makes the entire premise of the show stupid. And Lily Collins is fine in the role. She's actually good in the role. She's cute, and she's bubbly, but she also has seemingly no desire to learn the language or the culture. She seems steeped in her ways, so it's like she also comes off as kind of an a-hole sometimes in that regard. But through it all, I have to admit, I liked the show. I mean, like, I enjoyed watching it. I enjoyed the soapiness. The scenery's great, obviously. They picked really good music for it. I'm not really in love with her character necessarily yet, but I don't think you have to be in a romantic soap like this. But it's not well made. So I can't really give it a positive grade. It just checks so many boxes in the like how did this happen category. But I enjoyed it. So I'm just gonna leave Emily in Paris with a C. It's one of those grades that like I might keep watching a C, but I can recognize that maybe it's not very well made, and that is Emily in Paris in a nutshell. Enjoyable, but in all artistic senses, it's kind of lousy, I guess. All right, so Manhunt is next. This is Manhunt Deadly Games specifically, because each season of this has its own original title. First one was called Manhunt Unabomber, and the second one is Manhunt Deadly Games. So this, again, is from Spectrum. CBS bought this to fill a gap in their primetime schedule for the fall COVID schedule. So the first season actually wasn't even on Spectrum, which I guess is why they're starting with the second season. The first season was on Discovery. Then it moved to Spectrum. But what I find interesting is both seasons are about the same subject, basically, which is the Olympic Park bombing. So the first season, Unabomber, I guess, was all about finding Ted Kaczynski and the Unabomber. But the second one, Deadly Games, focuses on the actual bomb, and it focuses on Richard Jewell and all of that kind of stuff. So it's, I guess, the same essential story from two different points of view, I guess. I didn't see season one, so I don't know. It is available on Netflix, though, if you are interested in watching it. Whereas Manhunt Deadly Games is available Monday nights on CBS, or you can see it on CBS All Access if you have that, soon to be Paramount Plus. But we have here Cameron Britton as Richard Jewell, who is not somebody that I recognize, but he is on. He has an Emmy nomination for guesting on The Umbrella Academy, and he also played on Mindhunter on Netflix, which I guess is a popular show. So Manhunt, Mindhunter, he does all the hunting shows. And then Judith Light plays his mother, and in this first episode, we basically see the seeds planted of the bomb going off. We do see the bomb going off and sort of go from there about, Richard Jewell becoming a little bit of a hero. I have a lot of problems with this show. First of all, I understand that they're sort of farming out other shows from other networks, okay? But there was just a movie called Richard Jewell not even a year ago, and Kathy Bates played the mother, and Judith Light is fine, but she's no Kathy Bates. And Clint Eastwood directed it, so you have his touch on it. I don't understand why this was made. It seemed like the set, even where the bomb went off, the set of like the stage and everything, and Kenny Rogers seems to be the exact same from the movie. Um, I don't like, and this is just inferior in every single way. Like the movie had Sam Rockwell, like as the lawyer. Like it just so much of this movie or of this show is just simply a pale imitation of the movie. And it originally premiered on Spectrum in February, so it was probably made, before, it was probably completed before the Richard Jewell movie came out. So, obviously they didn't really have that to go on, but it's sort of the idea of Armageddon and Deep Impact both happening at the same time. But if Deep Impact was also about an asteroid, like it's just weird to tackle the exact same topic and have the exact same stance on it and have the exact same everything and just do a complete carbon copy worse version of it. If this came out 10 years from now, okay, obviously stories are cyclical, and something that hits now, can be looked at 10 years from now in a different light or whatever, and you redo it. But to have it so close to the movie Richard Jewell, and I'm not saying Richard Jewell was the greatest movie that there was, but like I gave it a B. It was a perfectly fine movie. Did it need to? I mean, this is, I think, a 10-episode series, maybe 8, but still, it's many, many, many episodes, much longer than the Richard Jewell movie. And do we really need to delve that much into this story? I don't think so. I think I got everything I needed from the movie Richard Jewell. So I don't want to necessarily grade something based on something else that already exists, but these are so close together, it's impossible not to. And what's weird is, I don't know why CBS specifically chose this show to pick up. Of all the, other than Spectrum Originals, there's a ton of other networks you could pick up shows from. And it just seems like this is an odd one, because I feel like the bulk of the CBS audience is probably Clint Eastwood fans and probably already watched this movie. So it's even an odd network to have picked it up. I mean, it goes in line with their NCIS and CSI and all that stuff, without a trace, but is it going to be something original for the CBS viewer? I don't think so, to be completely honest. So I'm going to leave Manhunt Deadly Games with a D+. So up next, we're going to talk about Emergency Call. This one is on a network as well. It's on ABC, and this is basically a direct response from COVID, because it's a show that was basically, kind of cobbled together. And boy, you can tell. So it's Luke Wilson, and I sort of mentioned this a few weeks ago because I thought it seemed like a Rescue 911 ripoff, but it's really not, because there's no reenactments of the actual things happening. They just reenact the calls, and it says right up front that like most of the calls, well, it doesn't say most, it just says some, have been recreated and edited to basically protect the privacy of the people, whatever. But so I did a little digging to see, like, okay, what actually is real, what was fake. Basically, all of these calls are reenactments, and not only that, but in the 3 articles I read about this show, nobody could quite figure out if these are even actual 911 operators or if they are just actors. So nobody really knows anything. So basically, this is a show designed to highlight the first responders and the 911 operators and all of that, and get to know sort of things from their perspective, but also to hear, all these calls. But the problem is, because they're all reenacted calls, and we're not reenacting the crimes happening themselves, we see lots of, aerial shots of just random, cities that are not named. We see a lot of the 911 people doing the calls and responding, but other than that, we don't really, we get no sense of who these people are. Like, we don't even get, a picture of them or anything. And then we have Luke Wilson in the meantime doing this, like, weird, like, he's a little jokey, like he's doing, not like America's Funniest Home Videos jokes, but like, I don't know, he just has these like little quips in between that just are irrelevant and useless, and then behind him is like a bunch of just bizarre, like it looks like he's in an escape room, like there's just bizarre things in the room behind him. It is the most bizarre show, and the problem is, like, it obviously is designed to shine a good light on 911 operators and what they go through, and the hardships of dealing with the call and not knowing what happens afterwards. But the problem is, because we're not even getting the real call, everything just seems so forced. And like I watched that show 911 on Fox, the drama, which is scripted, and they give you a much better look into the world of 911, and I'm sure it's dramatized a bit, but I get a better sense of 911 operators and what they go through from that show than I did here, certainly. This show is an absolute train wreck. It's even in COVID times, I think they could have pieced this together a lot better than they did. And I like Luke Wilson, but he doesn't really add anything. He tries to be really, stoic here, and, oh, well, there's X amount of calls that go out every day at 911, That's like, okay, that's fine. And then you chose, mostly serious calls, but then there's a couple of, like, comedy calls to kind of, like, lighten the mood. And it's like, if you're going to talk about how serious 911 operators have it and how much we appreciate them and all this, just kind of shine a light on the bad, not the bad cases, but like the dangerous stuff that they have to deal with, and the people, kind of screaming at them because they're so petrified of what's going on. And at one point they have this girl that they talk to because her grandfather's going into cardiac arrest or something, and she's a 9-year-old girl, and like, she's just, the actress playing her, it's like, it's so obviously staged. I'm not going to fail this show for the simple fact that I do think it's nice that they're at least trying to shine some sort of light on, like, all the 911 operators out there. Obviously, they have very, very hard jobs. So I'll give them a point for at least trying, but 1 point is all they get. Emergency Call is a D. Horrible show. All right, so we have two final shows. They're both on Showtime, actually, so let's flip over to that. One is a docuseries, and one is a drama series that I think is just supposed to go for one season, because it is based on a book. So I would say this is probably a mini-series, although it's not quite listed as such, as far as I know. But there's 7 episodes total. It's based on a 2013 novel, and both the show and the novel are called The Good Lord Bird. And it is about, the right after the Civil War. It takes place in the late 1850s, and it's basically taken from the point of this enslaved boy who is not real. They made him up for the book, but he is taken under the wing, you could say, of John Brown, who is played by Ethan Hawke, and basically he is made into a girl, because they're like, well, look, if we're with a girl, if we're traveling with a girl, we're not going to enslave you. Obviously you're free, and please come join us. But we're gonna sort of make you into a girl so that other people tread lightly around us. They're not going to try and take you back. All this stuff. So it's basically about the Harper's Ferry. Battle, I guess. That's sort of the ending, so I didn't see any of that stuff, but that's what the book leads up to, I guess. So I just saw the first episode of this, obviously, and I really like this. I mean, this is, I sort of went into this with, I go into a lot of things with open minds, but, like, Western is not one of my favorite genres. I, in fact, just said that the other day. That, like, a lot of Westerns that I've really tried, like, some have been okay. I really like the True Grit movie, and I even like the Lone Ranger in parts from Disney. But, for the most part, I've really tried to tackle Westerns, and they're not don't really speak to me, you know. But one thing about this is, number one, Ethan Hawke is outstanding, and Daveed Diggs is here too, who I always love. He's, you know, I go back to the movie Wonder with him, and obviously he's in Hamilton and all of that. Daveed Diggs has never given me something I didn't like. I mean, he's in the Snowpiercer TV show, which is great. He's in Undone, which was my #1 show of last year. Like, I love Daveed Diggs, but really, the two stars here are Ethan Hawke and the boy, played by Joshua Caleb Johnson, who is a newcomer, and he is great here. But Ethan Hawke, man, I'll tell you what, he's got one of the most interesting careers. First of all, he is not afraid to look ugly. I mean, he kind of came on the scene in the 90s as kind of like a pretty boy, like a grunge pretty boy, you know, Reality Bites and that kind of thing. But in the last few years, he's really, you know, spread his wings in terms of, you know, the characterizations. I mean, he's always been sort of a character-driven person from the Before series and all of that. He's always been sort of a character-driven drama person, but he's been in a bunch of, like, action and Western movies lately, where he really, you know, can shine, and he's great here. You know, I've written him off a couple of different times because I just thought sometimes he picked really stupid movies or whatever. Like The Getaway famously was you know, one of my worst of the decade. But, you know, when it comes down to it, he's really a good actor. He's great in Boyhood. You know, these drama performances are great, but here we mix drama with a lot of action. And something else I love about this series is it is shot like a film. I mean, you know, sometimes, yes, HBO and Showtime, they'll up these budgets, and, you know, we'll see really, really outstanding production values coming from it. But, like, thinking about some of the things I've seen recently on HBO and Showtime, you can still tell that they're TV shows, you know, even if they're sort of going for a more film quality style. But this, man, I mean, the budget they must have spent on this. No, I don't watch Game of Thrones on HBO. I from the clips I've seen, I know that production value is great, but you know, on Showtime, I don't see a lot with this kind of production value. It looks fantastic. The acting is great. You know, I mean, it might drag a little bit, but again, like, this is not something I was even thinking I would like. And here, you know, I will definitely watch the rest of this series. I'm very into it. You know, I think, you know, I guess if I'm gonna say a negative, because it's not like I'm giving it an A+ here. But yeah, I mean, the only thing I can really say to the negative is that it's certainly not necessarily authentic to, you know, what happened, but I mean, it's a fictional sort of portrayal of these characters, and you know, the little boy didn't exist at all. He's made up, but everybody else, you know, like the adults, I guess, all existed in the real world. But look, I don't necessarily fault shows and movies for that too much, because I think everything is sort of fictionalized a little bit. You know, here we've made up this entire kid and the entire storyline, but that's okay, as long as you know going into it, this is not necessarily going to be historically accurate. It's just going to be, you know, a sort of historical, but mostly, you know, a fun, dramatic, and action program. So I like that. And also, we don't really necessarily get to know any of the other characters as of yet. You know, so far in this first episode, mostly been about John Brown and the boy. Couple other people here and there that we sort of pick up along the way, or we run into, but for the most part, the characterization is based, you know, solely on those two guys. But still, I really, this is a great show. I really, really liked it. I give The Good Lord Bird an A-. All right, so finally, we're going to talk about The Comedy Store. This is a mini-series on Showtime that is a docu-series. I'm not exactly sure how many episodes. I think it's 5 total. But they've only aired, I think, 2 so far. But this is about, of course, the legendary Comedy Store in L.A. And if you've ever heard of any famous comedian, they, you know, pretty much had a big run at the Comedy Store. And a ton of them are interviewed here. I mean, you know, Jay Leno, David Letterman, Bill Burr, Whitney Cummings. There's archival footage of Robin Williams talking about it. You know, it's really this whole group of anybody who's anybody, be they relevant today or they were big in the 70s when it opened and sort of fell off from there. We talked to a lot of people that appeared on The Tonight Show. This first episode is sort of all about how The Tonight Show really propelled your career and how the bookers at The Tonight Show went down to the Comedy Store regularly to scout people out, because basically the Comedy Store opened right around the time that Carson moved The Tonight Show from New York to L.A., so he had that sort of presence there as well. So Mike Binder, who is a longtime patron of the Comedy Store and a comic as well, is the producer of this and the director, I guess, and he's the one conducting most of the interviews that we see. Look, I am a fan of stand-up comedy, and I love movies about stand-up comedy and the history of stand-up comedy. I went to the Comedy Museum in Jamestown, New York last year, and it was fantastic. I wanted to spend, another whole day there. I got there with only enough time for it to be open like 4 more hours, and I was like really bummed about it. But they had like a George Carlin exhibit, and I highly recommend the Comedy Museum if you're interested at all in stand-up comedy. But I love movies about breaking out as a comedian and The Tonight Show and Here's My Big Break and all. I love it. But unfortunately, I think these episodes are not going to necessarily focus as much on the Comedy Store itself as I would like. Now, I know a lot about the Comedy Store from just hearing comedians on talk shows and stuff like that, and I listen to the Marc Maron show a lot, and he is interviewed prominently here as well. They have a couple of clips of Mike Binder being on Marc Maron's podcast, talking about the Comedy Store, so there's a lot of stuff, there, but so I know a lot of the history from that I didn't quite get here, and maybe I'll get it in subsequent episodes, but, Mitzi Shore we talk about a lot. She's the creator, the owner of the Comedy Store. She created it, and she's Pauly Shore's mother, if you didn't know that. But she's barely a character at all. Like, they talk mostly about The Tonight Show and how, they started and how this, they'll say, yeah, Mitzi gave my break, and some of them will do Mitzi impersonations, but I didn't get enough of a sense of what the Comedy Store was and how it was created and all of that in the background of Mitzi Shore, and I would have liked to see more of that. In episode 2 they talk about the comedy strike, which I know very well about from the Marc Maron podcast, and then there's a one about Joe Rogan coming up in episode 4, so it looks like there is 5 total, but yeah, overall, I would have really liked to hear more about the Comedy Store itself as opposed to, Jay Leno's take on what stand-up comedy should be. Like, I feel like that's a different show. But as a comedy fan, I certainly enjoy it. I'm not sure that it's about the Comedy Store as much as it thinks it is, or it was designed to be, or something. But that being said, look, I love all of the interviews with the people, both the live ones and the archival ones. They got Jim Carrey. Anybody who's anybody that ever worked the Comedy Store that's still alive, they talked to, which is awesome. But is it about the Comedy Store? I'm not sure. So I'm going to leave it with a tentative B, because it's still very, very enjoyable. But I think based on the premise, it's not really about necessarily the Comedy Store itself, at least so far. So I would give it like more of a B- for that. But it is certainly very, very enjoyable for what it is. So I'll give it a B just for that. But I'm interested in the subsequent episodes. But all right, that's going to do it. I do try to keep these to about 45 minutes, so we'll end it there. Thank you so much for watching. We've got a lot of movie reviews coming on the channel. There is a whole bunch of Netflix reviews we're going to do this week, and then Friday, there's a whole mess of new movies coming out. The new Borat movie's coming out. There's an animated movie on Netflix that's getting a bunch of buzz. There's a new Bill Murray movie coming out, I think, on Amazon. So there's a lot this Friday, so I think over the weekend we'll tackle some of those as well. So a lot of new movie reviews. But if you're into my TV stuff, The Conners is back on Wednesday, so new Conners episode, I will have a review for you of that. But that will do it. Subscribe below. And comment, please, and all of that good stuff. And thanks for watching. We'll see you next time.